Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services here this afternoon, we would kindly ask everyone to please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
The poet Mary Oliver tells us, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things." And with these words, we gather to mourn the death and celebrate the life of Leslie Moore. In this sacred time together, we'll hear of Les's life, hear some inspirational readings, and most importantly, eulogies from his sons, from two of his sons, to reflect on the life that he lived. And with that, I want to offer this time for those reflections, and I'll begin by inviting Les's son David to come forward.
So I write sermons for a living, and coming up with abstract thoughts and putting them to paper and making sense out of nonsense is what I do. But writing a eulogy for my father doesn't make any sense. How do you begin to capture a man's entire life, his personality, his essence, and try to put it all in just a few pages? I mean, I know my gifts, and I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I think I'm a pretty good writer, and I don't know how to do this. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I do know, what it was like to be Les Moore's son, and try to capture that tiny sliver of his life through what I saw, what he taught me, and how he raised me. In some ways, Dad tried to be a fairly traditional father. I think he knew that none of us were ever going to be great athletes, but he still tried to teach us how to ice skate and how to ski. And I don't know about Jeremy or Jamie, but for me, neither of those things stuck. We played the occasional game of catch, but Dad was not the dad to teach you how to throw a perfect spiral or anything like that. And I think I can remember going fishing with him once. I caught a rainbow trout. We smoked it. We had it for dinner that night, and I thought it tasted terrible. Plus, putting the worms on the hooks really skeeved me out, so I think he knew that I was never going to be a great outdoorsman. And Dad had a workshop in our old house in Vermont, and where he'd occasionally tinker around fixing random pieces of furniture. And in elementary school, I used those tools to make a Pinewood Derby racer car for the Webelos Scouts. And I cut the wheels too low, and it didn't even make it down the ramp. So a lot of the traditional father-son stuff, the sports, the fishing trips, the learning how to fix things, a lot of those things fell by the wayside, simply because that's not how we, his children, were made. Instead, we learned other things from my dad. He taught English for 22 years and was a librarian for 20-some-odd years more after that. And we had a home full of books, some of which we even read. It was because of his influence that I fancy myself an above-average writer and have a job where some people, I think, care what I think. I was never a great student in high school or my first go-round at college, and I think that pained him, and that was due to my own immaturity than anything else. But when I started college again several years down the line in my late 20s, I think it gave him a glimmer of hope that there just might be salvation for me yet. And so as an adult student at Rutgers, he took a keen interest in what I was learning. Political philosophy, history, literature. He wanted to know the books that I was reading, and if he hadn't read them already, he got himself copies and read them too, just so we could talk about my classes. And when I told him that I wanted to go to seminary, well, I think he was probably very surprised and a little bit confused, because I don't think he quite knew what to think about the theology and the parts that required faith. But for every church history class, he was right there alongside me again, reading the books as though he was trying to get yet another master's. He was a scholar who his whole life he never tired of learning. He encouraged us to travel, to experience the world, to take in as much of it as we could. In the best years of his retirement, he visited places he'd always dreamed of, with trips to Scotland and Mexico and New Zealand, and several visits back to Italy, a place he'd loved since his first time there in the 60s. And when Jeremy and I had chances to go to Germany as exchange students, there were no questions of money or logistics or how are we going to do this. Those weren't even questions. It was just, yeah, he made sure we were going. New countries, new cultures, new ideas, new thoughts. He wanted to experience them all and wanted us to experience them as well. And occasionally that meant finding some unusual things on our dinner plates that we didn't always care for. But it was always with the knowledge that Pizza Hut was just a phone call away. And here I just have to say that Jeremy and I, we got the lion's share of the experience and the knowledge and the opportunities that Dad could give us. But it's our brother Jamie he had a special love for. And I don't begrudge Dad at all. He loved us all equally, but he loved Jamie more equally than others. He and my mom loved Jamie with a kindness and a tenderness that was special and uncommon. And for Jeremy and I, our dad was a pretty good dad. For Jamie, I think he was the best dad he could have possibly been. Our father, he supported his boys as much as he could. He supported us every step of the way. He was there for us through our own grief when Sonia, our mother, died. He had a patient, quiet, caring way about him. And his temper, to the extent that he had one, only made rare appearances, and only when we managed to press every single one of his buttons, which, as his boys, we certainly know how to do. But his preference was always to deal with us with listening and understanding first. When we messed up, he wanted to know how and why, and help us not make the same mistakes again. When we needed help either with money or family or school or whatever problems we had, he always chose to help first and ask questions later. And when the troubles of the world got to feeling too big and we didn't know how to process what was going on, he had a way of putting things into perspective and talking us down off the ledge. So in some ways, he was very much your traditional father. He had a dry wit, a fondness for wine, and socks with his sandals that went all the way up to the knee. In other ways, he was very much his own man. He enjoyed life on his terms as much as he could. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfect, not by any stretch. But he was fundamentally decent and good. He always tried to do his best to provide for us, to make us feel loved, to be a rock and a resource in times of need. And I can only hope that as a father to my own 3 children, that I can live up even a fraction to the example that he set. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you, David. And I'm pleased to welcome Jeremy to come forward now.
In 1960, Dad graduated high school from St. Johnsbury Academy in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. 30 years later, in 1990, Dad again took his leave from the academy, ending a 22-year career as a high school English teacher, in order to begin his second career as a reference librarian in New Jersey. At the last assembly of the school year at the academy, it was customary for a graduating senior to offer a testimonial for each retiring or departing teacher. And for Dad, that honor fell to our next-door neighbor, Josh Gagliardi. And Josh opened his remarks by saying, "Mr. Moore is the epitome of the absent-minded professor." And honestly, I can just end this right now. Dad was the epitome of the absent-minded professor. Full stop. Try the veal, tip your waitresses, be safe driving home. If you knew him, you know this. Any conversation with him could lead you into a rabbit's warren of esoterica. The breadth of his knowledge was such that you could plumb the depths of his learning, and at the end of it, neither one of you could remember what the hell you were talking about when you started, or how you got where you ended up. And that is truly its own kind of glorious. But as we who knew him know, that while this is entirely true, it's not the entire story. I, of course, as Dave has mentioned, we knew him as a dad. And I know he did the very best that he could at that. I don't think he was instinctually a dad. Not all of us are. I do feel, looking back, that maybe he wasn't entirely prepared to deal with the small humanoids infiltrating his household and scribbling permanent marker on his antique roll-top desk, probably me, using a screwdriver to dig holes in the plaster of the hallway walls, definitely me, or shredding the canceled checks and throwing them in the air and pretending they were snow, also me. And Jamie, sorry to throw you under the bus, but it was you too. He made rookie mistakes. I was too young to remember the incident myself, but Mom once told me that there was one time when we were at her parents' house, Nana and Pop-Pop's. I was about the age of 1, and he was holding me, sans diaper. I don't know why. He very shortly found himself covered in yellow mustard. It wasn't mustard. But he was there. He showed up, and if there's one thing I've learned about fatherhood, about being a dad, it's that you show up. When we had birthdays, Mom organized the parties and baked the cakes, but Dad was there and he did the decorating. When Jamie and I turned 4 and 3, respectively, he made Bert and Ernie cakes for us. For my 4th birthday, he decorated the cake as the little engine that could, and to this day, blue and yellow is the best tasting frosting combination, hands down. I have done my best to keep up this tradition for my own kids, giving them, hand-decorated birthday cakes because, according to my experience, that's what dads do. And Dave, I'm sorry, but I think with the benefit of hindsight, you'll agree that the Halley's Comet cake in 1986 was a much better choice for your 7th birthday than the Challenger explosion. And yes, that was your original suggestion. One of Dad's great inexplicable passions in life was collecting postcards. Ask me how I know. The vast majority of these postcards are of places in New England, and the vast majority of those are the Northeast Kingdom, the towns in Vermont where he grew up, where he raised his children. For all his travels, for all that he was willing to uproot his family, like it or not, and I did not like it, thank you very much, he always regarded the hills of Vermont to be his homeland. In New Jersey or Pennsylvania or New Jersey again, home, of course, was where he was and the people he loved and lived with. But his home, the place where he was from, that was always, ever, Vermont. To borrow from President Coolidge, Vermont is where he first saw the light of day. There he received his bride, there his dead lie pillowed on the breast of the everlasting hills. The artwork he collected is almost entirely landscapes of Vermont. On the walls of the home that he shared with us are no fewer than 6 representations of the house that he raised us in. One of them is on display out in the lobby there. Davis talked about Dad's Wanderlust leading him to explore Europe and the Middle East, to visit our ancestral hometown on Loch Lomond in Scotland, and he took Jamie on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to visit Aunt Connie and Uncle Jean-Guy in New Zealand. He once hitchhiked from Vienna to Istanbul with an Iranian truck driver. It was the 60s, everyone was doing it. But for all his travels and living the majority of his adult life outside of Vermont, he always considered the Green Mountains to be his home. Yes, I am presenting him as at once a world traveler and someone who felt himself thoroughly rooted to the landscape of his youth. He was a parent who loved his children but didn't always know quite how to deal with them. He was a bookish nerd who nevertheless, wanted us to experience outdoor life. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. Dad is large, he contains multitudes. Those of you who recognize the reference to Walt Whitman are hereby excused. The rest of you need to report to study hall and write 300 words on American transcendentalism. And yes, Dad contained multitudes. His traveling days are done. His children are grown, and although he never successfully taught me to ski downhill, several attempts at least were made. He has one last journey to make. In the spring, his ashes will travel one last time to the Northeast Kingdom to rest alongside our mother on the hillside in Peacham. So, in closing, I'll turn to the great poet of our ancestral Scottish home, Robert Burns, who wrote, "My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a-chasing the deer, a-chasing the wild deer, and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, wherever I go." Farewell, Dad. I'll see you in the Highlands.
Thank you so much, Jeremy and David, for those heartfelt words. And apologies, I neglected to introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Reverend Eric Posa. I serve a church here in Cherry Hill, and when Maggie first contacted me about the funeral today, the memorial, we talked about a couple of possibilities of what to say, and one that we mentioned that in retrospect of some of the things I've just heard seems especially appropriate is the 23rd Psalm. And while my own seminary professors would cringe at me using the King James State Version, I think it's appropriate for this particular reading. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As both of his sons were speaking just now about what a good man and what a merciful person Les was, I was reminded of these words, but also reminded of the reference to the valley as someone who will soon find a place of final rest along the side of a mountain. There is comfort to be found in the thought of walking along the valley. For sometimes it's going to be shadowy, but at other times it's going to be a reminder of all that is good about Les's life, as in his own way he has the ongoing opportunity to look out over a valley himself and to remember that the so-called shadow of death need not be a dreary place. It'll have its moments of darkness, sure, but it can also be a time to remember the best of who Les was. And there's no right way to grieve the death of a friend or a loved one. It's never easy. But David and Jeremy have just modeled the goodness of taking a balanced view of the triumphs and a few of the struggles that he may have faced, acknowledging all the facets of who he was and how he lived. And that, I think, is the most genuine way to honor someone's life. And again, there may be no single right way to grieve, but I do encourage each of you to keep lifting up the warm and the positive memories of how Les impacted your life, even as you're acknowledging the pain of his loss. Because there are so many good aspects of his life that remain clearly in the hearts of those who knew him. And the impact of that life can carry us forward to embody the best of all that he embodied during his time with us. So I want to approach our time of conclusion by inviting those of you comfortable to do so to join me in a prayerful spirit. I'm grateful to my colleague in ministry, the Reverend Naomi King, for writing these prayerful words. Spirit of life and love, God, known in so many ways, and whispering breath of mystery, rattling our spirits with tears and sorrow, draw us back to the wonderful, the loving, the beautiful times that we had with Les. Recall to us his inspirational actions, his caring, and his commitment. Grant us these good stories as shelter from the blasts of loneliness and from the hunger for being together as we once were. Together we shall be again ashes mingled with ashes, as together we came out of the stars and the earth, stardust and mud, extraordinary and mundane. These ashes are blessed because Les's life was holy, was worthy, and was meaningful. So may this time be a reminder of the gift of his life, a gift of renewal. All those who knew Les are blessed to have known him. We are blessed to carry on some part of his story. And from such blessing, we give thanks for this life that has gifted our own. So may it be. Amen. And while Les's 83 years of life on this earth may have come to their conclusion, we can take comfort that Les now rests forever in a peace that passes all of our understanding. And so for us who remain in this world, may we move forward in our own lives, guided by this final set of words, again from the poet Mary Oliver. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us know. To live in this world, you must do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. And so we do let go. We do bid farewell to Les's physical presence in our lives, even as we go forth from this place, carrying with us the many ways that he's impacted our lives. And in that spirit, I thank you all for coming and bid you go in peace.